Hey, 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 everyone. Welcome to Too Ambitious. I'm Trish Lindo. I'm so happy that you all are here today. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Too Ambitious. Show me some love. I want to see those emojis. I want to see this show light up. Just a reminder, if this is your first time joining the show, this is a live series that celebrates Black women and women of color entrepreneurs who are changing the world. They're innovative, they're resilient, and yes, of course, very ambitious, hence the name of the show. Well, today I'm super excited to have the one, the only Jenn Tardy on. Now, you're probably wondering, do I know Jenn Tardy? You might, because if you're on LinkedIn, she's amazing. Jenn Tardy is a LinkedIn top voice. She's the CEO founder of Jennifer Tardy Consulting, which is a training and consulting firm specializing in diversity recruiting and retention. She's located in Maryland, and her mission is to help workplace increase diversity and retention without harm, which is most important, as we all know. So without further ado, everyone, please help me in welcoming the Jenn Tardy to the stage. Hello, Jenn.
Hello. Trish, I wonder, as I was backstage, I was like, do people really know how funny you are? I don't think they know. Oh my, and they should. They should know.
I try to be normal, Jenn, but sometimes it doesn't work.
Oh my, you brighten my day.
Well, I'm super happy to have you here. You are always a ray of sunshine. I'm so happy that we are having this conversation to amplify your voice. And I want to know about all the incredible things that you have been doing in your career. So thank you once again for being here.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, so let's get into it, because everybody wants to know a little bit more about you. So you've had a successful career in corporate, working for Fortune 500 companies. And we all know, entrepreneurship is not easy, so tell us, what made you decide to make the jump, the leap into entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So, right. Doesn't that just take you back? You're like, oh.
Yeah.
So, I did not realize until recently that I've always been sort of like entrepreneur adjacent. I mean, even when I was in college, I used to braid hair, and I didn't know that I had a whole business going on in college, right? Okay, so anyway, fast forward to my last job. I started feeling this itch to do something more, and at the time, I wanted to do it with the company that I was working with. So I had this amazing plan where I was like, well, if we could do some sort of road show where we could give great advice to Black and Brown job seekers. I call it like the miseducation of the Black and Brown job seeker, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it could be sponsored by this company. I would do it myself just so we can, create equity in the job search process. We build community. The community wants to come back and work at this company. And I was just so excited. I could see it. I could see the audiences before they ever saw me. And I presented it to someone, and they were like, "No," just like, "No." That was around the time that I was like, "Okay, I feel like I'm being pulled to do something greater or more impactful than what I was doing at the moment." And that for me, it really started making me think about my leap into being an entrepreneur. Like, how could I do it? So it started off as like a side hustle. And eventually I was like, okay, it's time to go.
It's time to do it. How long ago was that, Jenn?
Oh, so I left March of 2018.
2018.
March of 2018. But
Okay.
in October of 2017 was when I started to feel like I want to do a little more.
Yeah. Okay. So you've put some time in already. I mean, you've put, as they say, you've been in this game. You've been doing it.
I have some scars to show you that I've been that I've been in the entrepreneurial world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and tell me about one of those scars. I mean, I think let's talk about like the finance of it. How did you sort of get ready to start this company? Did you do it all yourself? Did you have help in any way? Because that's usually one of the biggest barriers, especially when you're starting out, is like, okay, how am I going to like support myself, support my family, and start this business, off the ground?
Here's what's so interesting. To answer your question up front, and then I'm going to take the scenic route. Up front, I bootstrapped my business, so there were no loans, no accelerator. There was none of that. It was money out of Jennifer's pocket. Now,
Oh, yes.
Now to take the scenic route, I remember the day that I heard there was this video that went viral by Steve Harvey. You know the video Jump? Where he was talking about if you're feeling something, you've got to take that leap of faith on yourself. And there's one part of it in particular that said, okay, now when you take that leap, you have to understand that the net just isn't going to come out. The net is guaranteed to come out, but there are going to be some bruises and some bumps along the way. And, and you hear it and you're like, oh, okay, some bruises and some bumps.
Yeah.
But in real life, it can be painful. And so when you're asking me as an entrepreneur, how did I fund my business? When I first started the business, because of the side hustle, then I left corporate America, it was coming out of my pocket. But there was a season, and I don't know that I've ever said this on a live. So here you go.
Do tell.
Get this, where's the tea, right? There was a period where I remember being in my bedroom, laying on the floor, like face down on my floor, arms back like this. And I was like, God, if this is what you have in store for me, I was like, I don't have nothing else up my sleeve. I don't have no magic tricks to pull out of my hat. Like this is, if you have this in mind and in store for me, like I need something, right? Because I had payroll to make and all this other stuff. No, nothing. And so what I love about that experience is it gave me the moment to see for myself that the net will come out, right? That if you're moving in the right direction, in the direction of your calling or whatever it is that you're trying to build, the net will show. And so that the next time you go through it, you're like, okay, well, I now have historical proof that the net will come out again. So yes, from a funding perspective, there were moments where people stepped in to say, I believe in you and I want to help you, family and friends. That got me through, that I was able to pay those loans back and to keep things moving to the place that I'm in today. So I'm very
that's incredible, Jen. And I mean, hey, listen, whatever you believe in, whatever your faith, prayer helps, right?
This was fleeting. It was like, I don't have nothing up my sleeve. I don't have no more tricks.
Right? You just like by your bed on your knees, like, dear God, I totally get that. How did that moment change you? How did that moment change you when you really had to figure out how to do everything? You prayed, you had the support of family and friends. How did that moment change you, and how has it impacted who you are today? Because now you're Jenn Tardy. You were the Jenn Tardy.
Oh my God. What are people thinking? No. But that's an amazing question, because again, it's not something that I've talked about so publicly, and I'm happy to be able to talk about it. I am more than ever today, a strong believer in philanthropy. And let me even take it, let's even bring it down. Philanthropy is so big. I want to bring it down. I'm a strong believer in giving to the point where anything that comes into my personal pocket, I allocate those funds in 5 different ways. But one particular account that I have is that 10% of anything that comes to me is dedicated to a giving account. And if ever I'm feeling moved or led to give, I give freely in different ways. And so it's not me saying, okay, are there any entrepreneurs out there that are going through what I went through and they could use some cash to move things on? One day I may get there, but today it's like, I genuinely believe that moment in 2019 had people not looked at me and said, I believe in you, I can help you in this season of your life. Right. If they hadn't given to me, I wouldn't be here. So I believe a lot in giving today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have joy. I have so much joy when I do it.
I mean, that's one of the things I love about you is your joy, obviously,
No.
but I think, there is power in gratitude and the power in giving back. And I think everything that you put out obviously returns to you tenfold, right?
Right.
So, I think it's amazing that you have, made that such a priority in business. I haven't heard that before. So,
Mm.
keep doing what you're doing, Jen. I love that. You
You
know,
know what I want to be when I grow up?
Hey now, listen, because you're only like what, 18? I mean, I get it. You still have
Right,
time.
right.
Yeah, you still have time. So, tell me a little bit about your business, Jenn Tardy
Yeah.
Consulting, so that we have an idea of your work and, basically how can we support you? How can we get involved? How can we get some of this joy?
So, okay. So what's interesting to note is that there are actually two businesses. So I'll
Okay.
talk first about the consulting business because that's um, why we're here, and that's what led me to you. And then I mentioned something about the other one too. So in the consulting world, at Jennifer Tardy Consulting, our team, we call ourselves Team JTC. We help employers to increase diversity and retention without harm. And so we help them through training and consulting. So some employers will come to us and they'll say, "Can you do our recruiting for us?" We don't do that. Training and consulting,
Okay.
and where we teach recruiters and hiring managers how to increase diversity inclusively. We and our trainings they're more immersive because I've been a recruiter my whole life, it seems.
Right. Yeah.
And so we help them to understand the obstacles that job seekers move through in order to get employed.
Right.
Um, did I miss a part of the question before I tell you about the
No,
other?
remember you said there was going to be you have two businesses. So you're going to share the first one first. Now you're going to do the second one. So now you're doing the second one. That's why I'm here, Jen. That's why I'm here. Okay.
Thank you. Now, on the other end, I actually work with two other owners. So I have two other business partners, the three of us all together, where we own PWP Health.
Okay.
And we're in the mental health industry where our caseworkers and our therapists go out into the community to deliver services, specifically for people who are Medicaid eligible in Chicago, Illinois. We actually have a location there. And we help them to get connected to anything to help them live independently, from shelters to food, even to like Social Security and things like that.
Wow. Okay. So you started with one business and ended up with two, and you have business partners. Okay. I love that.
It's, it's
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's all a testimony to your hard work and your passion for what you believe in. So when you talk about mental health, I know that's something that's obviously near and dear to you and important to you. What was it that made you decide to start that business? When JTC was still going, and it's so different, right? Too different.
yes, two very different things. Funny enough, it takes such a long time to get licensed to go into the mental health industry that my business partner and I, it was just two of us at the time, we had applied for licensing. It takes a year. And in that time period is when I started the consulting business. So I
Okay.
actually started in mental health first. We just didn't open the business until after the consulting
Ah,
started. Why
okay.
mental health? It was so shocking to me, especially in communities of color, specifically Black communities,
Mhm.
how much mental health challenges go undiagnosed.
Right.
And I didn't realize just how um, just how things from bipolar disorder or severe anxiety, severe depression, all of those things really impacted like even my family, because it was like, oh, that's just my aunt, that's just my cousin, that's
Yeah.
just how they've always been, right? And
Right.
so I think it really sort of started hitting close to home, and I became very curious about it. A friend of mine who had started the business prior to me mentored myself and my business partner through it, thankfully. And so here we are today.
Amazing. Well, and especially when you're talking about mental health, I know that, DEI, and if you are a Black woman, in the DEI space, which you are, doing that work is not easy work. Anytime you're trying to affect change, we all know that that is something that can have an impact on your mental health. So let's get into it. Let's ask the hard questions. So we know that as of late, there's been backlash against DEI. How do you feel about that? And what is your thought process right now? About where we're at with DEI and how do we move forward?
It's so interesting. So when DEI was, let's just say, when it was at its peak around the time of the George Floyd murders and Ahmaud Arbery, when it was at its peak, I think many DEI professionals and practitioners understood that there's such a spotlight on it right now, but eventually what's going to happen when that spotlight starts to dim, and how are we going to keep this going?
Right.
So it's not, for me, shocking when I see that there's been, a lot of backlash and people are trying to figure out the right way forward. I'm grateful to still know that there are many organizations out there that said then that we take it seriously, and they're still on the front lines of it today, trying to figure it out, trying to, make a systemic change. That
Right.
I tend to spend more time focusing on those organizations that really want to do the work, versus the organizations that are moving away from it, that were just checking a box to begin with, only because we knew that this season was going to come, and I'm hopeful that more organizations rethink those decisions and go from checkbox and checkbox practices to more immersive practices.
Yeah, absolutely. And Clarine was asking, who's joined us. Hey, Clarine, thanks for joining. She wanted to know, has it impacted your business at all, during this time?
So it's interesting. So if you use the example of what I was saying earlier, that even if there are fewer organizations that are focusing on this work, how much they're investing in this work helps to keep things balanced. And another thing too, because we are not at Team JTC, we're not in DEI in general, we're in DEI as a specialty. So we go through the path of recruiting to help people to understand how to layer in inclusive practices, right? And so organizations are still talking about recruiting, and I do my best to do as much work, as much of that immersive work in helping recruiters and hiring managers to say, even if your organization isn't doing all of this, here's what I want you to take from this, and here's what I want you to do, so I can still do my part to keep it alive and to keep it thriving through a recruiting perspective. I hope that helps.
Yes, that does help. And let's for everyone who's joining, let's definitely show Jenn some love. Let's see some heart emojis. You want to follow Jenn Tardy. She has this amazing newsletter on LinkedIn called Increase Diversity, which I want you to touch on a little bit too, Jenn, your newsletter, and why that was so important for you. It comes out weekly. So if you're not following her, follow her now and subscribe to the newsletter. So Jenn, tell me about increased diversity and why, what can we find in that? Why it's so important to you as well?
It took me a while to figure out what I wanted to name the newsletter. And I started looking around at other people's newsletters, and the ones that really resonated with me were the ones that told you in the title what action they wanted you to take. And that's where I came up with the name. Like, the action that I want people to think about or take is to increase diversity. And so one thing I've always loved to do is write. Now, to keep a newsletter going, we're at 200, maybe over 200 articles in there. And I've gone from it being a me writing to now there's a team of us that are writing together to make this happen. This newsletter gives me a chance to explore. I almost like to be a kid in a candy store. So it's to explore ideas and concepts of things that you don't just see everywhere. For instance, why did we ever start using job descriptions? Or at what point did we start recruiting? So like, if we're talking about systemic issues in recruiting, can we go back to history, to when were we ever doing it right? If we were, how did we lose our way? So we get to explore all of those different concepts in the newsletter. And so I think we're now at over 80,000 subscribers to the newsletter.
80,000, 80.
80.
Okay.
And I'm grateful and I'm thankful for every single subscriber to the newsletter.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Well, I love the newsletter because every time I read it, I learn something new. And Gabrielle is saying, hello, beauties. Hello, of course. Of
Hello.
course. Yes. So Gabrielle, I'm sure will be subscribing as well to the newsletter. Uh, no pressure, Gabrielle. Uh, but one of the things when you were sharing about the newsletter is, what type of impact have you seen so far, not only from the newsletter, but from the work that you're doing with recruiting and hiring more people? Are these corporations actually hiring more, increasing the diversity in their organizations, especially now, so many people are out of work and everything like that? What are you seeing? What are some of the trends that you're seeing?
The biggest impact that I'm seeing are that more people, recruiters and hiring managers and leaders are leaning into the conversations.
Okay.
So I share with people often that if you help your team, if you give them effective language to use, especially in complex topics or topics that feel intimidating to them, they're going to lean into the conversations more. One of the things that I've been grateful on is the feedback that when we're training or when I'm doing workshops, people feel like, how you and I are having this conversation right now.
Yeah.
This is exactly how I show up in a workshop, where it's like I don't want people to walk away thinking that I am inaccessible. I want them to feel through our trainings that you're sitting down, you're having a conversation with a friend where you can ask the questions. There's no judgment, because at the end of the day, the intention is to give you the education that you need so that you can make change or be more effective.
Yes.
So we spend more time making sure that people they feel more qualified, capable, and confident to do this work. And that's the feedback that we've been getting on our end, that they're like, yeah, I get it now.
Yeah.
All these misconceptions. I spend a lot of time clearing a lot of misconceptions up.
Oh my God. What's one of the biggest misconceptions that you often hear?
That increasing diversity is the job of a recruiter. And so it can position the recruiter as either being the hero or the villain. So if an organization is underrepresented among, any marginalized groups, it's like, oh, if the recruiters would just do their job, then we would have a well-represented population here. So that's positioning recruiters as the villain. Positioning recruiters as the hero is saying, oh, well, if we really want to increase diversity within this organization, just throw more money at recruiting. Just give them more money. If you give them more money, then they can invest in the right things. But no, it's actually a partnership. It's a partnership between the recruiter, whose sole job is to increase representation within the candidate pool, right? That's their job. Good faith outreach efforts to make sure that you have a well-represented candidate pool. Your hiring manager and hiring teams, they're making selections along the way. So what they have to make sure that they're doing is eliminating their biases. You have to do the real work to eliminate your biases so that you can select the most competitive person. That, which is another misconception, that you're supposed to select the person of color, the woman, et cetera. No, there's a whole formula to this. But
yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing that, and I didn't even realize that. And one of the things that I think is interesting, especially for those people out there who are looking for work, if you are a person of color, that's always in the back of your mind. Is someone going to be biased against me, or whatever the case may be? You're also a career coach, Jenn. How do you talk people through that? That fear. Because the fear is real,
Yes.
How do you talk them through that?
So as we think about this hiring obstacle course that marginalized communities have to navigate in order to get a job, to get employed, and to get promoted, because you can't forget the promoted, I find that you would think I would spend more time coaching a job seeker through, oh, answer the questions this way,
Right.
wear this, don't wear. No, instead, more coaching is, what's happening on the inside. Number one, do you see yourself? Do you see your value already? Because if you've been in spaces where there are so many microaggressions and people don't really see you for your value, by then you're probably feeling like 50% of yourself. And so, and if you already feel like 50% of yourself and you're that person creating your own resume, your resume is going to be 50% of your value. And the way you speak to yourself in the interview is going to be 50% of, what you are able to bring to the table.
Right.
So one of the first things that we begin to work on is what's happening, that internal obstacle course that you're, and I begin to tell them truths and to get rid of a lot of those misconceptions that way. So that's what that, and if I can get a person, this is the beauty of it. If I can get a person to see themselves in the value that they have to bring to any employer, not just the one that they have an interview coming up with,
Right.
then the way that they answer the questions, the way that they show up for the interview, the way that their resume looks like, all of that begins to take care of itself.
Mm-hmm. You know what, Jen? I just need you to talk to me every day. That's basically what it comes down to.
Yes, it works.
We just need to talk every day, because you are always spitting facts, and I love that. And, doing the internal work is so important to getting over fears, to, imposter syndrome, and I think once you do the work, it does help, but you can't just stop. It's not a one-off. It's a constant work that you're always doing, right? One of the things, that I think is fascinating at this time too, is the rise of AI. And Clarine has asked that question, do you think AI will improve or hinder equitable hiring practices? Which I think is a great question.
Have you ever felt like you've said something and people just aren't listening or taking it as seriously? It's almost like something is coming. I need people to pay attention. So when it comes to, which I love this question, when it comes to AI, I share with people often that I think it can be AI creates great tools that can help employers, especially in recruiting.
Yes.
But what I don't know that a lot of people are paying attention to or putting enough added emphasis on is data in, data out, right? So who's developing this software? Who's developing, these AI tools, right? Because the bias that's within the human that's developing the software and these tools will feed into the actual tool itself.
Yep.
And then on the other end of it as well, too, I often urge recruiting teams to not use artificial intelligence or software that has it as a means to eliminate people, because at some point you're just delaying the inevitable, that human is going to come in contact with the humans in your workplace. And so AI does not eliminate the need for real training and the real work that has to happen to recognize our own biases. If we're not careful, it just delays that process from human to human contact.
Right. Wow. Whew, rise of the machines. I watch too much Terminator and Minority Report. So but
Me too.
yeah, right. So AI is here to stay. We just have to learn how to use it more effectively. Is basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
So we have another question from Gabrielle. She is a senior in college and has she's been a DEI president on campus for 3 years. She wants to know, how much time do you give to people who don't have any DEI priorities, or do they have to be ready with the intentional mindset to partner with you in order to work with you? Great question, Gabby.
It's an amazing question. I always want to know in consultations, what appetite does your organization have for this work that you're trying to do? And I can genuinely tell by who's sitting across from me in the consultation. So let's say if it's a recruiting coordinator that's coming to me saying that the team needs the help and can you do a proposal for this workshop? And that's when I'll start talking about, but your organization also has the appetite to support it. Otherwise, this is going to be a challenge of futility, right? Now, if the chief HR officer is sitting in front of me, then I'm like, okay, all right. So it really, to me, I can figure out how much emphasis or investment the organization is trying to put in it, just based on who's sitting at the table and what sorts of questions are they asking. And I can figure that out through the consultation. And it's not about would I work with them. Right. It's about, will they ever move through what they need to move through to work with our team.
Mhm.
As an example, I again need to use the recruiting coordinator. If the recruiting coordinator is the one that's trying to do it, and then I send you a proposal and you see the ticket cost, you have to get all this approved. And so those are the barriers that you have to get through. And if your organization doesn't have an appetite for it, they're not going to invest that type of money into it.
Yeah. And they have to be able to want to do it, to make that commitment,
Absolutely.
to
Absolutely.
actually affect change. Well, I know we have maybe 30 seconds left. I don't wanna leave you, Jenn. Jesus. I feel like we're like kindred spirits.
That's okay.
Um, but I do wanna know, my last question to you, Jenn, is do you enjoy being an entrepreneur? Because you seem really, really good at it.
Thank you. I was telling someone the other day, it would take a lot to get my personality is so big these days. As an entrepreneur, it would take a lot to fit my personality back into working for an employer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so I'd be one of the people that's in the meeting with all the senior managers, and they be about to make a decision. I'd be like, oh, and they'd be like, what is the problem? I'm like, no, 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 just keep going because I probably shouldn't say this right now. But it would just be too much. Let me just remain an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I love that. It sounds to me like you need to start creating some videos, Jenn, some TikToks, because we need to see, how would Jenn react to this?
That's a good one. That is a good one. Yes, that
No, I
part.
love it. I love it. Well, I enjoyed our conversation, Jenn. You are so amazing and wonderful and joyful, and of course, very ambitious. And I want to thank you for all the light that you've put out there with the work that you're doing. And thank you for all the work that you're doing because you're changing the world. So thank you.
And thank you for having me and for creating this show, Trish. I cannot wait to see all of the other too ambitious ladies that you bring on this show too. So kudos to the
Woo!
work that you're doing.
I love it. Thank you all so much. And thank you, Jenn, for being here. I know you got to go save the world. So thank you, Jenn. I will see you next time. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Watch Too Ambitious next week and make sure you follow Jenn. And if you have any questions for her, message her, DM her, or follow her at JennTardy.com. You can't miss her. She's amazing. All right, everyone. Have a good rest of your day. See you all. Bye.